All right, so here's how we're gonna do this, right? If you've never been on an optimization boot camp with me, if you've never been on a training with me, this is how we're gonna do. Most of this information is really outdated, so I don't mind sharing. Most likely you will not see a brand's name, but if you do, chat me on the side so I can remove it and blur it from the training that goes to the public later. But basically my intention is that you get to become more efficient on how you're looking at your data when you're pulling your data. When you're pulling your report, excuse me. And so this report is very native to the trade desk, okay, which is a pretty popular and used DSP in the industry. And so if you're not familiar with this report, they call it the initial insight combined pivot report. It's a template you can pull for all your advertiser. If you're in a trade desk and you never pulled it, my strong recommendation is that you schedule some of those reports in advance. So the best way to be optimizing your campaign is to make sure you do some preliminary steps. So before you gotta get to this level of trading or optimizing, I strongly recommend that you follow through on a few things, right? And I'm not gonna share, I don't share it, it's not on your screen right now, but just hear me out. It's important to understand what we're doing for this client, for the client. So this is a financial service brand. Our goal is, I believe it was a collective CPA of $25. And another thing that you want to understand is that the difference in the conversion that we're tracking. So if you're not following, this is your moment to raise your hand. This is a safe space. If I'm speaking too fast, this is a moment for you to let me know, like, hey, Ellen, can you repeat this? Because I want you, this is for you. I want you to take as much as possible out of this. And then you'll get recording as well. And as always, you can email me and Slack me and do whatever you want and get on a call with me even, okay? So don't stress the details here, but do speak up. You're safe. Nobody is smarter than anybody else here. We're all here to learn together. And so I want to really preface this, like this is peace and love in this group at least. So before you even get to downloading this, you have to understand who the client is, who the advertiser is, what kind of objectives we're looking at, what kind of KPIs we're going to base our decision on. And also things that I like to do is like, I like to do a quick QA of how things are set up before I even get here, okay? And the reason why is because like if I don't understand the messaging, or if I don't understand, like even down to that landing page, that end landing page that they get through, it can be hard to make certain decisions. Okay, so that's my recommendation for you is that before you even download, understand these few things. Take the time to maybe 10 minutes to QA your setup to refresh your memory. Make sure that things are set up correctly, but also make sure that things are firing correctly. When I say firing correctly, that means the tracking, the mappings that you're measuring as conversion points, that they're actually collecting data. So you'll see the numbers from 7 days to 1 day past and things like that. So make sure that you do this upfront work first. And in order to be productive during your optimization, I recommend scheduling these reports. If you don't know where to start and you're using the trade desk, for instance, just go to this report. It's initial insight combined pivot. It's a template, and then just schedule it to come to you on a weekly basis, on a daily basis for that one client or the advertisers that you're looking for, okay? And last thing I will say is that you always want to look at the last 30 days data, unless you're like actively and consistently optimizing every day or every week, then last 7 days, okay? By looking at last 30 days or like by pulling last 30 days data, then you can see if there's week over week variances, day over day changes that happened since the last time you made a change, etc., okay? So again, I have two things that I like to share, and I can share to whoever needs it, but I have an optimization checklist where I literally walk through some of the things I just said, and then I have an optimization grid that helps you get started. The optimization grid is simply just showing you like if you have a conversion-based campaign, these are the targeting levers you want to look at. But before you even understand which targeting levers to optimize, when I say targeting levers is like, are you looking at inventory? Are you looking at time of day? You got to understand what you're doing, okay? So because I know this campaign, I'm going to tell you, it's a financial services brand. and my CPA is $25 for all collective conversion. So that means that all the conversion I'm tracking, it needs to be at least a collective of, what did I say, $25. So when you first download this report, there's additional metrics that you might not need. For instance, everybody see my screen, right? It's not too small. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Thank you. So the first thing I do is clean up for my eyeballs, right? I want to make sure that I only see, or I only pay attention to things that are important. And so what I'm going to do is, like, for instance, average bid CPM. If you don't know the difference between average bid CPM and advertiser CPM, is basically like what base bid, or what is the bid we landed with when we won that impression, okay? And the CPM is the bid plus the data fee and plus any ad tech fee or partners fee that's related. That's why your CPM should technically always be higher than your base bid, okay? So this is basically just letting us know like how competitive the things are and how much the clients would charge, okay? So I kind of don't need this for this example, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove it, okay? So again, the first thing I do when I first pull the report is just clean it out a little bit so that my eyeballs can see things correctly. And then I wanna make sure that the metrics that are going to help me make the decisions are going to be pulled, okay? So some of those metrics are, I'm gonna remove player completion rate just for the sake of the example. But if you're running a video campaign, obviously that's the only metrics. That's the column you want to keep, basically, okay? All right, so let me see. Looks like I did this work before, so good. So my impressions are my conversion are pulled, but again, one of the my CPA is $25 for all, like a total average of all of the conversions. So I want to pull this, okay? So if you're not familiar with Excel, I recommend, actually, y'all, in the Edge Academy, the Traders Edge Academy, there's like a Traders Toolkit, like Traders Essential, and within that module, there's like an Excel 101 or Excel Essential for traders. Look that up because it's going to talk about how to utilize a pivot table. If not, you can YouTube it, obviously, but you kind of want to have at least a basic understanding on how to best use your Excel or a pivot table at least. So what I'm doing is literally using the search bar to pull all clicks conversion and all clicks CPA, because again, that's my KPI. Your KPI might be CTR. Your KPI might be CPA of the first conversion or the second conversion, okay? For the sake of this example, let's just go ahead and use this one. It's easier. Cool. All right. So now, as you can see, I'm pulling based on ad groups level. Why? Because when you optimize, you can't optimize at the campaign level and make decision from a campaign level. It has to come down to you have to look at the hierarchy of the advertiser, the campaign, and the ad group. It has to come down to the ad group, because what's working in one ad group may not work in the other ad group depending on which campaign you're in. So that's why you will never see me optimize you'll never see me like pivot it campaign unless it's like a lot of campaigns, obviously. You'll always see me looking at the ad group level, okay? The first thing you want to do, and then we'll get into the inventory, is that based on your KPI, which for me is CPA, okay? Let me see if there's any question. Okay, good. Based on on my KPI, I want to see which one is the worst or which one is the best. Again, my CPA goal is $25. So I'm going to use the conditional formatting. Boop. I never remember which one it is, and I've used it. Okay, good. So the second conditional formatting is that the highest number will be in red and the lowest number will be in green. Obviously, if it's in red, then we want to address it because it's way above the $25 metric, right? Here's another way you can do this without without even looking at your conditional formatting, is that in your pivot table, you have this little arrow here. If you click on it, over here it says sort by ad group. You can sort by whatever you want to sort by. And if you click on the CPA, again, that's the KPI I'm optimizing. You can put descending. Descending is going to be the top, right? Ascending is going to be from lower to top. Descending is going to be from large to small. And so that's another way for you to see the worst performing against the top performing, okay? So for the sake of visualizing this all into one, I'm gonna hide it. You can delete from a pivot table, okay? Well, at least not that way. So I'm gonna hide it for now. Actually, yes, I'm gonna hide it for now because I wanna see it all in the same view. So obviously the 102 is the worst performing one, right? And when I look at it, I see that it's viewers, it's a retargeting ad group with a display message, and they're only retargeting viewers from our OTT or CTV creative. That is why, y'all, naming convention is hella important, okay? Don't go over there naming your ad groups, ad group 1, ad group 2. This ain't telling us nothing, okay? So make sure you're as organized as possible, as productive as possible, I would say, and that you name your ad groups the way you're supposed to. Trust and believe. This is going to save you a lot of time. And also it makes things really clean. So with that said, now I know like, oh, this is a retargeting ad group. That's probably why it's not performing as well, right? Or should it not be performing the worst? Should it be performing the best? Okay. So based on that, I'm going to literally select every ad group that is not performing well. And that's how I'm going to start my optimization. Okay. So again, once you download your report, after you did a quick QA of how things are set up, of if things are tracking correctly, you always want to pivot in your ad group, the total ad group. And if you don't know which ad group to start with, simply rearrange your table to see the worst performers and the top performers. And based on that, start there. So it's okay to start with the worst performer first and then go on the opposite side to like the best performing ad group, and then, and then continue that way, right? So over here, wow, there's like this one has like 17 cents of CPA. Why do I still want to look at the top performing? Can anybody tell me? Just unmute yourself and like try to guess. Why would I not only look at the worst performing ad group? Why should I look at also the best performing ad group and optimize them?
I would say the top performing you, for one, could learn from for future campaigns, but then you could also, when you optimize it, you could get an even lower CPM and continue to increase the efficiency and performance of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's exactly right, right? You want to learn from the best performing and see if we can try to add the best performing stuff into the low performing ad group. So that's why it's important, okay? And also, I don't like the whole, at least not in our field, I don't like the whole like don't fix what's not broken. Nah, sis, like just because it's working right now, it don't mean that you shouldn't touch it. This is not a set it and forget it type of deal, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and look at, so this is OTT viewers. We'll look at either one of these two, right? Because they're the worst performing. And so again, I have an optimization grid. If you want to look at it, and I can drop it in the Slack after, it's literally a screenshot of if you are running X, this is how you should start. Because ideally, you're supposed to look at that same ad group, you're supposed to look at everything. You want to look at inventory, supply, site, and vendors. You want to look at time of day. You want to look at recency, technology, data elements, all of the above, creative. You want to be able to look at all of them. But time is a commodity, and y'all, we just started and it's already like almost 20 minutes to the call, right? And so we don't have a lot of time. So what I'm teaching you here is nothing out of what you've already been taught. It's just like when you get to that moment to do it efficiently, start here, and then move on. So that grid, it's just showing you that. The grid is going to tell you, like, if it's a conversion base, you can look at any of these targeting levers. And when all fails, if you don't know where to start, you can never go wrong by looking at the inventory tab, period. Okay? So let me just say that. If all fails and you ain't know where to get started, you will never, like, you can't go wrong with like looking at the inventory tab, because there's so much. Oh, that's why. Let me do this. I think it's this one. So again, I'm not going to make any decision based on a campaign level. So oops, Y'all probably can't see it because I can definitely not see it. So you don't see it. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is, if you don't have this added, is to drag it. Like literally you'll drag it down into your filters right here onto your right, and then keep the site as here. And another thing too that I'm gonna just drag down here is the supply vendor, because we're here to understand how to build your own supply path optimization, which is just making sure we select the right vendors that are sustainability friendly, that are performance friendly, and that are awareness friendly, but also diversity friendly, all of the above. So that's what it means to build a supply path optimization these days, right? At least for us buyers on the buy side, we want to make sure that we're only working with the top suppliers that are checking off all 4 boxes, not just 1 of the 4, not just 2 of the 4, at least 3 to 4. Okay. So that's that. So I went into the second tab, the inventory tab, and I went ahead and filtered to the display one. So we'll look at OTT if we have time, but let's just try with the display. Hold up, partner. All right, cool. So the first thing I want to do is exactly the same thing. Again, top, low, top, low. Remember those two, top, low, top, low. And now I'm going to introduce a new thing, which is called probation. Okay. So when I am within that targeting levers report, and I'm analyzing that, excuse me, I'm analyzing that report, I want to look and focus on the top and lowest. Okay. So here's the thing. Since my KPI is a CPA, let me see if I added it. No, I didn't. Okay, I'm going to add it real quick. The first thing I want to do is add it. So I'm going to drag it fairly early next to advertiser cost. Boom. And I'm going to do the same thing for the CPA. Boom. So now it's over here. Boom. Okay. Hold on. All right. So this is what I want to look at over here. And this is a CPA. So I definitely want to do that. I kind of don't need the CPC. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it. I'm going to keep CTR and clicks. And this is what advertiser cost. Again, before I even look at what I'm going to remove for site list, I want to rearrange it so that my eyeballs can really see what it needs to see efficiently. Okay, so I'm just rearranging so it's all in one window. If you have a bigger monitor, power to you. You don't have to do that, but I don't have a bigger monitor, so that's what I got to do. Okay, all right. Okay, there it is. Oh man, it didn't save. Okay. One moment, please. If you have any question, you can go ahead and ask it now while I do this. No? There you go. Okay. Okay, well, we're just going to keep it over there. All right, people. So now I have things a little bit better arranged. I keep the win rate because sometimes win rate can help me identify how, like, let's say, how like competitive things can be. Like if my win rate is really low, then maybe I have either a scaling problem or a bidding problem. Like I'm not bidding high enough. And so that would be one of the first changes I want to make, right? And so I'm going to go look at my CPA, and then I'm going to look at 2 things. So tail aggregate is Trade Desk way of saying those are all the websites that are at your tail end of performance. That means that these websites are, even though it has the highest impression, they're like many of them within that tail aggregate, and it didn't pass the Trade Desk minimum threshold to be marked as its own site. So instead of not showing you the site, they're just regrouping it in the tail aggregate. And if you ever needed to look at the tail aggregate, then all you have to do is it dragging site? There you go, is to drag the site, and then it'll show you like an average of those sites. So see, like these has 0, very, very, very low. If you want more information about the tail aggregate or how how a partner, how the trade desk decide if this is a tail aggregate, you can reach out to them. I'm sure there's a better definition somewhere. So I'm not going to take account of the tail aggregate. So I'm honestly going to remove that, not remove it, but I'm going to uncheck it just in this moment because I don't want tail aggregate number to skew how I'm looking at those numbers because tail aggregate did not pass the trade desk threshold just yet. Okay, but we're still going to look at it. We're just ignoring it temporarily because that's how I know how to work the pivot table. Another thing too is that when you are selecting your column here, see as there's 1,500 lines, right? Here's the thing, I use a Mac. Remember those shortcuts on your keyboard so that you don't have to manually scroll down. It's Shift Command, down arrow, or up arrow if you want to select, or left or right. Shift Command, down arrow is going to select the whole thing. And if you want to, let's say, remove one of the line, then you just remove your finger from your command and you keep Shift down. Okay. So we just play it on your off time. Remember, Shift Command down or Shift Command up. Okay, and play with it. So I'm not gonna select the grand total because that's gonna skew my numbers as well. Like this is just a grand total. So let's go. All right. So let me go up. All right, so the same thing I did is like, I'm gonna rearrange I'm gonna filter it to show the top one in a second. But before I do that, here's another thing. When you're optimizing anything, you wanna take account of your main KPI. Yes, so my main KPI is the all sum of the average of all of the conversion CPA. But it's important to look at other metrics, and that's what I'm recommending you to do. You wanna look at your cost. Why? Is because if something has a higher cost, like a higher spend, basically cost is the spend. If something has a high spend, but like almost no conversion, why are we still talking on this? No, we got to cut them off. Okay. So look at your main KPI, but look at other metrics to help you paint that overall picture. Cost is one of them. Impression is one of them. Why? Because I want to see like if it was against, I want to see how much reach we had to get to those numbers, if that makes sense. Oops, I selected the wrong one. Thank you. There it is, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's keep going. So right now I'm just adding my colors because that's how easy it gets. And then another thing that I recommend is if in your campaign right now, you're not maximizing the amount of conversion you're tracking, then you might be missing on some very important information for this campaign. What I mean by that is that if you're looking at your trade desk or even in DV360 and you're not able to track additional conversions, right, or it's not set up per se, then you're missing an opportunity to do a great job versus just a good job, okay? And we don't got time to be good. We are great people, so we got to deliver great stuff. So in order for us to do a great job is to look beyond that point. So I'm going to take account, make my decision based on that main KPI, and I'm going to look at the other conversion. For the sake of our example here, conversion one is a contact. Oh, wait, it's right here. Boop. So TC1, which is open a new account. TC2 is direction. TC3 is contact us, personal loans and business loans. So see these as like, oh, the conversion that's set as one, like the first conversion is opening a new account for that financial services. The second one is the direction, contact us, personal loans, etc., and business loans. Okay, so those are page view, obviously, because you can't, there's no submission just yet. So that's something you wanna also know of. Okay, and that's why I recommend queuing at first, because like if you don't know this stuff, like how are you gonna make a true decision? If something says 0 here but it doesn't say 0 over here, probably that person did not want to open a new account, but like they looked up directions, so maybe they're already in the branch right now opening an account or something like that, right? So that's why it's important to look at the multiple touch points and measure as much as you want. Okay. All right, so any questions so far? Y'all good? All right, so hold up. My computer is still thinking here. Okay, cool. So I want to look which one is the top performing one. So I'm going to do this. Boom. All right. So all I did again is filter. This is just, it's just using Excel's formula, like based on the numbers you see, which one has the highest spend, which one has the lowest spend, and sort it by this metric. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just leave it like that for now. Okay, cool. So eBay.com has the most, that had the highest CPA. Oops. eBay.com. And then I see USA Today, I see The Sun, I see Old Navy. All of these sites are telling me something about my buyer here, or about my shopper, or my consumer, whichever you want to do. So I'm going to mark these as, yes, I'm going to mark these as, I don't know. Let's just change this color to green, and you'll understand why I'm changing the color. All right, so now the green are the ones that have the highest CPA, right? So those are above my $25, or they have some type of CPA, so they have some type of conversion. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna switch the filter, and this is the hack that I learned how to do very recently, thanks to somebody who showed it to me. This filter. After 10 years ago. Okay, it's kind of slow. I'm gonna redo it to impressions, and I'll tell you why in a hot second. Okay, so now it's already descending, so it should show me the top performing one. Okay, so all of these, this is why I start with a KPI, and then I visually mark them and continue looking at the data, right? Because you got to manipulate the data the way you want. So what I did was mark everything that had some level of conversion in green, because the CPAs are high. And when you look at the total conversion over here, there's only 41 of them. So I want to be able to see whichever is bringing me the most. Okay. And you can also use this guy right here, for instance. Okay. And so by marking them green, I can just filter other metrics in to see how it's performing there, and understand like, oh, actually this one has a conversion. So it's easy for me to see conversions, right? Because the next decision is that if there's no conversions for a good minute, right, there's no point of bidding on those sites. It's not performing for us. We're not converting. And this is a 2-month report from May 1st to June 30th in 2022, right? So since this is not performing, why keep bidding on it? But here's the thing. You don't want to cut off a site that hasn't had a chance to perform. So what I do is, like, depending on the average, and you see the average at the bottom of the Excel right here, depending on the average, I wouldn't cut any site below a threshold I set based on what I'm seeing. So you can use the formula of an average. You can use the median formula, right? That to mark the median, the halfway point. But what I would like to tell you is that if those sites have not have the chance to perform below that, above that threshold, like if they don't meet that threshold, you probably need to just let it sit for a little bit longer. Okay. Is this making sense about the threshold? I don't see nobody's faces.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So what I would recommend is, like, anything below 1,000, maybe don't cut it right away. But you know what? If you ever ask the trade desk, they probably have this formula, because back in the days they had a formula for us that we would implement, and then below that, whatever the formula would give us, we would not cut off those sites just yet, because again, you don't know if that site is going to perform. Maybe it needs more time, more than 2 months maybe, to perform. And another thing is that if you don't see any of the green one below that threshold, then that's fine to just keep looking. All right, cool. Oh wait, no, okay. Whoa. Okay, so see, it says hiphoplately.com is in a green, but it only has 47 impressions. So it's below my threshold, so it's safe. All right, so I'm not going to delete. I'm simply just going to hide them. It's not telling me enough yet. I can't cut or add or bid higher or bid lower yet on these sites. They just need a little bit more time to prove themselves, okay? It's not just like Mulan, not all flower bloom at the same time, right? So that's the same concept. So now anything above my threshold, that's how I'm going to start cutting off those sites. Because first of all, it's been 2 months, okay? If you have the above the impression threshold, you should have at least one or some conversion. Now there are cases where, for instance, over here, this is the spend, right? You don't see, you know, $2-3. It's not that bad, but $2 to $3. Let's imagine that. Let me show y'all. Wait a minute. Okay, so like if you, let's say minus the Old Navy one, so that's a total of $197, right? Let's say if we're like, oh, you know, it's only $2 to $3 here. It ain't gonna hurt. No, it is gonna hurt. It's $197 that we just spent with no conversion, no nothing, right? And now this is 2 months. So if we have, let's say 10 months left in the year, that's close to $2,000 in wasted dollars. That's not nothing. So I don't care if it's $1. If that website is above threshold, it's not performing, okay? And you're not only looking at your main KPI, but you're also taking account of all the other KPIs. Time to cut them off. It's just not performing yet for this particular ad group, and that's okay. Okay. So here's the thing. Before you make that decision, though, make sure you look through some of these and you understand, okay, well, are some of those websites like just not brand suitable for me? And probably that's why the audience ain't behaving well or not converting, excuse me. So what you can do is look and see if there's trends, okay? So if there's trends, then you want to write it down on your very fancy note taker. Always have a note taker. I don't care if you trust your brain, if you have the best memory in this whole entire planet on this globe. I don't care. Write it down somewhere, preferably in the cloud, so that it's not living on your desktop and your team cannot see it. But create something like a Google Sheet, a Microsoft Note, right? Microsoft has those notes for the whole team, and make sure you write it down because you want to be able to remember. Let's find a grave. Okay. Let's say if iHeart.com, is this iHeartMedia? Well, let's see. Let us see if it's iHeartMedia. Oh, you guys cannot see my screen, can you? All right. I think I only share two. Yep, it's only sharing. Let me see. What am I sharing? Yep, it's only sharing. Okay, so I did look up the website and it looks like it's iHeart Radio, iHeart Media. Yeah, it's live radio, so it's streaming audio, I guess. So you want to look at some of these sites and was like, okay, is there a trend? Like Southern Living, We Are Teachers, Chess.com, Taste of Home, all of those, like Taste of Home, Home Talk. I just saw something else. Is there like a trend like HGTV? Is like home and lifestyle content just not performing for this audience? So you want to take notes of that. Another and then just see moving forward, if like the more you do this, you should be able to see like based on this trend, it's just not working, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna remove them. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take notes of that. I'm gonna pull a very fancy note. Hold up. Oh, bummer. Oh, Biscuit, you can't see my screen, can you? Hold on. Is this helpful so far? Are you following?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say this was my very, very fancy optimization note. If I know how to type optimization note, and I'll be ending very soon. In the next 5 minutes, we're going to wrap it up so I can have a chance for questions. So the first thing I want to do, take care, please write down the financial service brand, service, okay, brand, and then the ad group, and then let's do this. I copy pasted both, okay? So what was the ad group again? Hold up. You don't get distracted with my vision board in the back. Okay, there you go. So the ad group is this one. Okay. What I also recommend is that once you're in the trade desk, add the link from the trade desk or from the DV from your platform, whether it's TechAdapt, DV360, add the link to your note taker, because then if you are looking at that, let's say 2-3 weeks from now, you have no idea how much time it can save to just click through and going straight to that ad group instead of logging to the trade desk, putting in your information, doing the damn verification, authentication thing, waiting for the text to come in, things like that. Like, you want to be able to go straight to it, right? I mean, you still gonna have to authenticate yourself, even so, but at least it's faster. So again, it's about being very, very efficient with your time. So what I'm doing is taking notes that everything above that threshold that I've set, 1,000 or that average, let's say if you have a lot of more website and the website have a lot more awareness to it, then you can get a higher threshold. But for the sake of example, I've decided that 1,000 at least impression. Anything below that, we're not going to look at it. It needs to prove himself. It's like Mulan, okay? It's a little late to bloom. Anything above that threshold, if there's no conversion, no activity, and we're still spending, I don't care as low as $1, you don't want to keep bidding on it. You don't. What are you trying? What are you trying to do? You're trying to what? No, we're not going to wait until the end of the year to remove site. Okay, until you get to that 2,000, you can start removing as that dollar efficiency. So Old Navy, I'm not going to remove just yet. I'll be back to talk about the top performing things, and then I'm going to keep going. But again, take notes. So the following sites are the low performing sites based on what? Not based on, but I'm going to say with spend, with higher spend and no conversions. Okay, that's that. And then if you again, if you don't, our CPA goal is $25 for all conversions. Okay, and for this client is TC to 5. So you want to be as detailed as you can. I mean, obviously, don't fluff it. Nobody got time to fluff it. Don't fluff it. This is just for you and your team at the moment, okay? But at the end of the month, it's going to save you a lot of time when you do your monthly report, because now you're going to look at, maybe you've looked at the same ad group 2 times or 3 times this month, and you're going to be able to tell the clients, TMZ ain't working for us, but Old Navy did. So maybe have a specific inventory or specific PMP with closing brand. Old Navy is a whole family. Maybe have target families, multi-generational family household, things like that. You can really let your creativity speak, because it's all data driven, but at the same time you want to be able to take account of those. So again, I'm removing this because it's not in green. If it's in green, that means that there's some level of conversion. Okay. And also that's why I do this, is because if you don't, that's just like a quick hack, right? Like, if not, I would have had to go back and forth. But now I know for a fact that those in green, I set it that way because I know they have some level of conversion. Okay. So these are not performing. The next step is to exclude them. And the best way, the best way to do that in the trade desk or your DV360 or anywhere is to go in your ad group, and you can either do it 2 ways. You can add it directly in your ad group, or you can add it to your universal block list. It depends. It would literally just be like exclusion, creating a new list and adding it the same way you would add, let's say, a PMP or something. I think it's the same window. It's a different rail, but you need to exclude these, okay? Because we don't got time to spend $2-3. That's $200 in 2 months. Nobody got time for this. All right. Everything that is not performing needs to go bye-bye. Period. It's not performing. Let's keep going. All right. So as you can tell, there's quite a few sites here, right? But worry not. You cannot scale cannot, you cannot hurt your scale if you remove, let's say, how many sites was that? It was a total of 100 and some change, and we had maybe what, 10. You can't hurt your scale if you know, if you remove like 100 site or 10 site. There's so many sites out there in the streets, trust me. Now if you're the opposite of me and you're like, Ellen is hell aggressive, I'm not like that, you can go and start with the worst one. So let's say if you want to stop right here and just exclude these 30 sites, then you exclude these 30 sites first. That's where probation comes into play, right? So you have the exclusion sites, which is the list that is not performing but has spent, okay, above that threshold. And then you get the probation list. That's what I call probation list, is that, these ain't performing bad, but they ain't performing good. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to take notes of those, right? And then, where did I sub curse forge? And then above that, let me see how much more. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take note of this because I'm like, okay, so I don't see any conversion, but these kind of make sense, right? And it looks like they have a lot of impressions, and they have a little bit more spends, and maybe, I don't know, maybe CTR is like KPI 2 and they're above your CTR, and you want to give it a chance. Let's just say, right? You want to give it a chance. So you're going to add this in your probation right here. And then next time you optimize, if these are still considered probation, you exclude them. If next time you optimize and some of these sites are still in your probation, like you don't for real know, and this is the second time they hit the probation list, it's probably time to exclude them, okay? Because if there's more time that's passed, it's either going to be good or bad, okay? Now, if there's a case of, let's see, okay, these actually have some conversion, but the CPAs are really, really high, then maybe you can keep it on your probation list because you know that, oh, there's conversions there, you don't want to exclude them. But the whole point of doing this is that we spend where we need to spend the most efficiently possible. For instance, another thing I would recommend excluding is these two right here, right? M Lottery Post and Cool Math Game. Come on, we spend how many dollars? And with who? With no conversions? No, we're gonna have to. So earlier I was telling you about excluding everything that has no conversion, but if like you have spend and there's a higher spend and there's still no conversion, then definitely exclude them, okay? So Mail Yahoo, I'm gonna keep Mail Yahoo in my probation because maybe I don't know, Mail Yahoo usually performs well in other ad groups that I've worked on, so I'm gonna give it a little chance. But if Mail Yahoo is not working next time, I'm gonna cut it off, okay? And the same thing with these right here, okay? Like we're spending how much? $300, and you still haven't performed. I'm gonna cut them off. So again, you want, it's a lot of sites that you're cutting off, but trust me, you're not gonna be hurting. There's a lot of impressions. I mean, there's a lot of sites out there. I mean, the total over here is almost close to 1 million impressions. Like you're okay. But again, if you don't want to cut them all at once, then definitely cut the ones that have the worst spend, or the highest spend, excuse me, with like absolutely no conversion. Okay. Now let's say in 2-3 days you come back, you do the same thing, and then you see that some of those like eBay and Groupon are still not performing. Let's say if you come back, eBay is still not performing, but it has some type of CPA, then even if there's a small amount of conversion, it's still not optimal. We want to bid on site that gives us the most conversion at the most optimal cost, and 153 is not it, right? So you could be okay cutting this one off after, okay? All right, and so obviously the top performing one. So again, the probation is like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep it or not, but like at least I want to remember them. Top performing, highest conversion count at the highest conversion count for now, because like CPA is kind of high. What was it? This is when I going to switch it back to my conversions. Now all the green should be on top. Okay. Whew. All right. So now I'm going to take care of, oops. Okay. Now I'm going to copy paste this because I'm not going to delete them, but I'm also not going to bid higher on them just yet because it's just not, there's not enough data yet. Like, you know, $153, that's not optimal at all. Like, I don't want to have to do that. Now, again, eventually $153 should be excluded because it's just too much. It's costing us $153 and eBay has a lot of awareness. So instead of spending $153 here, I want to spend it here, right? In those top threes that have, you know, a CPA goal that I want. So that's why we exclude and include inventory. It's like when you exclude it, you're telling the machine, yo, these, I don't want you to bid on it anymore. And whatever dollar we would have bid on, right, is going to go towards something that's performing much better. Now, when you hear me say, like, what are the trends? Like, you want to look at this, right? Like hip hop, USA Today, hip hop lately, I don't know. Sports Yahoo, The Sun, Atlanta Black Star, all those could be considered like news-like sites. So maybe that's something you want to take account of, right? So you want to say like we're seeing a trend, and I'll fix my weird trend where news-like sites have the highest conversion, are performing, are converting. Let me just see that are converting. Add local news PMPs to the ad group and test it. Okay. And then the next step is that if after adding this, you're continuing to see that the trends continue to increase, then you go back to the client and be like, we are seeing that your audience is indexing high on those news-like sites. Even after I'm adding those PMPs or those, you know, specific inventory path to my ad group, maybe we should have a creative specific to news reader, okay? And then you can test that, all right? And so that's why looking at site, that's all the things you can do and build on when you look at your site. It's the fact that, well, news is performing fairly well. Well, if I'm not targeting that one PMP that's called local news in DV360 or Trade Desk that I've seen scrolling down, then maybe I want to test it, right? Or maybe it's sports news or, you know, sports, or maybe it's something else, right? What was I trying to write over here? News or other news? I don't know what I was trying to write over there. That's why you need to make sure you read yourself. But okay, so I'll stop right here because it was a lot. Any questions? Okay, so any questions, and then I'll show you the last step to do. Mm-hmm. You can ask your question. No? Actually, yeah, go ahead.
These, would you tend to, like you were saying, exclude more of them, or would you do more like bid factoring and things like that, especially within like the trade desk?
So it really depends. The most media answer you can get. It depends on your data. What I would recommend is that if it's the worst of the worst, there's no point. Like for instance, right? Like these stock over here, I literally spent what? It was $300 in 2 months or $400 in 2 months with no conversion. Even if I have a lot of impressions or the reach is there, it's not performing. So I would exclude them. And now on some of these, maybe they only spend an average of $2, maybe I'll bid down on them before I remove them, right? But if you're going to spend time bidding down on on a website, then you probably should just go ahead and exclude them. Now, if you're going to spend time bidding up on a website, then it's worth it's worth doing it. But before you bid up, I would remove and continue trimming as much as possible. And if you have to bid up on a particular site, you want to know which one of those sites, which one of the supply vendor gave you that site. Okay. So for instance, here. So, and here's the reason why I always try to change colors, and you'll see me use highlights and stuff like that. Usually even the probation one, I have it highlighted in a different color, because when I pull like the supply vendors, I want to know if Cathay Media referred more conversion forward side or the probation side or the not performing side. And it's sometimes easier to just look at the color, like the color coding here. And I forgot to do that for the other one. Because here's the thing, right? Let's say, for the sake of this example, let's say I am looking at, and that's going back to your answer, Kelly, like if I'm looking at share through, and let's say share through had the majority of the sites that they referred were green, then I would rather write it down here and say, share through has the best performing referral site, whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. And something I always do is take a screenshot. I can take a screenshot and add it right here. And then I'll be like, oh, okay, now I remember why I said that, right? So you go through this whole list and you decide which one of your vendors, let's say if Smart Ad Server is in the red. Let's say if I had color coordinated my probation in yellow and then my least performing one in red, then you want to say like, what Smart Ad Server is giving me all the, excuse my French, shitty sites. I'm going to exclude them. It's not performing. Why would I keep bidding on them? Exclude Smart Server. Okay. So before you want to bid up, like you want to test to see if that's the case. I honestly don't feel comfortable bidding up on a one particular site. If it's a group of sites that is performing best, Kelly, before you bid up on that particular site, I would even continue testing. Like I would add local news to that and see if local news sites that were added are still performing well as much as those news sites that were performing well. If I see continuing of the trend, then I'm going to pull those sites into a separate ad group. I'm going to allocate maybe 10 to 20% of the total budget only to those ad group, right? Because I know that these sites or this trend or this category is performing. And that's how, instead of bidding up, okay, and rising your CPM and rising all of the above, then you just reallocate this money and you tell the trade desk or the DSP, like, because I'm allocating 300 out of my $1,000 only going towards news, I know that this is going to perform. I need you to only spend that there. Because if you leave it within the fluid budget, then, you know, COA or whichever the DS algorithm is, it's just going to bid wherever, and it might not prioritize some news sites. Mm-hmm. So I would do that before I specifically bid up on, like, let's say the sun.com.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any data to show that bidding down would help on good performing things? Because I've noticed where it seems like, okay, if I have something that's performing really well and the CPM is also low, mm-hmm. Like you were saying, it doesn't really make sense to raise that CPM by bidding or by bid factoring up. Mm-hmm. So at that point, would it make sense to bid down? Because I know that that's not like a prioritization thing. It's just how much we're like multiplying the bid.
Yeah. So I would bid down before I bid up on anything. But when it comes to site list, like your list of sites, mm-hmm. if you have to bid down, you might as well just cut them off.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
You might as well, because there's so many sites out there. Yeah. That's why I said, instead of bidding down on the site level, then pivot in your supply vendor, understand which one of the supply vendor is referring those sites that you would bid down on, and then go ahead and maybe bid down on that supply vendor as a whole. Okay, if you're afraid of scaling, then yes, you want to bid down on that supply vendor first before you remove them completely. Okay, because again, what you're trying to do is like, I'm trying to make sure that all my dollars are spent where it works. Now, if you bid down, you're still spending some type of dollars on underperforming inventory. But if you're bidding up, then you're doing what you're doing. Like you're bidding X amount more, and then your CPM can rise. But sometimes you got to pay to get the result, right?
Mhm.
So when all fails, look at your supply vendor, write it down, and then you'll start seeing like smart server for the smart ad server. Actually, that's not the right name. But for the sake of the example, let's just say Programmatic and smart ad server are the one that refer the worst inventory every time. Then you write it down, and then you're looking at an education brand, and then you were like, yo, smart server and Programmatic are still not performing. And then you go and look at your tourism clients, and then you're like, yo, these two vendors keep not performing. You cut them off and you call them out. That's what supply path optimization is about. You get Programmatic and ad server, smart ad server on the phone call, and you're like, I spend these amount of dollars on your inventory for all of these clients, and you're not performing. Pay me my money back. There's very little chances that will pay you money back. But what they're going to do is come back and be like, yo, bet, let us give you this deal, this private deal, okay? And test it on your campaign. And if it's still not performing, then let's talk about it. And that's how you build a little bit more. And that's how you can do the same thing for the top performer, the top performing supply. Like if, let's say, OpenX and Colossus are performing well almost across all of your brands, call them up and be like, yo, you're performing really well. What else can we do to be more efficient? I want to give you my dollars versus, again, for the sake of this example, versus Programmatic, because I know that you're performing across most of my channels, right? And so that's why Colossus is going to be like, oh, bet we can do this for you at this CPM. And that's how you build your supply. And moving forward, after a few months, you're only going to have a handful of 5 to 10 supply vendors that you're only going to buy from, because it's data driven, okay? Based on all of your optimization, you can tell that, yo, this ain't working for real. This is working almost everywhere, right? And so I only want to bid on that. We don't need to bid on all 35 supply vendors to 100 supply vendors out there in the streets. You don't have to. You don't have to.
Mhm.
You can perform very well with the select amount of partners that have like the proof. Like you can show the Carfax about those data partners, you know? So that's what I would do.
Thank you
That
so
was a
much.
great question. Yeah, you're welcome. That was a great question. So Anoop, I know you're on the sell side, but when you hear this, what are your what are your thoughts? Are you like, yo, what? Is this crazy to you? So Anoop is on the sell
Yes,
side, guys.
the numbers, but I appreciate the efforts and time that goes into optimization, and still there are a lot of things happening.
Yeah.
This was
Yeah.
intense, actually. I learned a lot of stuff.
Okay, good. And I like hearing your feedback, because again, you're on the opposite side, right? So you're on the publisher side,
Yes,
and like you're trying to work with buyers like ourselves so that we continue bidding on your side. But honestly, most of us traders don't have the time to look up too deep into those sites. Like you saw me
true.
out, oops. I only looked up like a handful of sites that I was like, what is this here even? And then that's it. So when I see, look at this, there's no way for me to determine if it's an MFA, so made for advertising site. There's no way to determine if it's Black owned, Asian owned, minority owned media, right? Like I literally solely make decisions based on these numbers here. And
Numbers.
sometimes it could be problematic for a publisher, because like it's a bigger picture for y'all, right? And so in the next session, we'll try to take it one step further, and really understand like how to preserve and continue, supporting some of those media owners that need support. Because again, I just make decisions based on these numbers, right? It is what it is. But and that's why I recommend pulling in the supply vendor. Because if for instance, I mentioned Colossus because I know they have minority owned media. Like
Hmm.
if you know that Colossus is not performing and you're like, yo, I really want to continue supporting minority owned, get on a call with Colossus and understand, like, is it just the way is it the tactic that I'm using it in? Is it the audience that I'm using in? Is just canceling everything? Like, why am I not seeing good numbers from this media? Take the extra step, you know, And as a trader, it's going to benefit you from many angles here, because now you're building your network. Now you have a contact directly at that company. And if you don't, most likely I have it. I can get you in contact with them, things like that. All right, so we're at time. Any last questions or other questions or comments or feedback? Slickdeals.net. What the hell is this? I don't know. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna let y'all go. Listen, y'all, if you feel hella overwhelmed right now, that's fine. It's good. It's because there's a lot going on. All right. Don't worry. I need you to shut it down. Go walk for a minute. Go hug a pet. Kiss a baby. Hopefully it's yours. And then come back. Take minutes for your brain to cool off. For real. And then I will send you that are on the call right now. I'll send you a copy of the visual. And then you should have a copy of the audio at least going to you automatically via Fireflies, which is the note taker, and it's transcribed. And if there's anything you want to follow up, then I'm happy to jump on a call with y'all, because I love y'all and I want y'all to be successful. So don't hesitate to reach out to me via, what is that called? Slack. But just take a moment to cool off and even get back to it on Monday, because it's a lot. But you're capable of doing that. And let me tell you, y'all, I've worked with seniors that have no idea how to do this. Seniors meaning they've worked for this industry for 3+, 4 years, 5 years plus. Okay, they don't understand how important this process is. Okay, so you're doing the right thing for yourself, for your career move, whether it's with your current job or in the future for new jobs. Okay, so just give yourself a pat on the back, because you're the bomb.com, and then I will see y'all a little bit later, or next week at least. Okay. All right, next week we're talking about multicultural targeting. So holla and come out again next week and invite your people. Tell your friends to come. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye bye, guys.
You're welcome. Bye.